The security monitor glowed with cold blue light, its digital timestamp reading 11:47 p.m., October 16, 2025. The image showed a basement unlike what most would expect. Polished concrete floors, state-of-the-art climate control systems, and in the center, something that belonged in a medieval dungeon rather than a multi-million-dollar estate. A steel cage 8 feet by 10 feet, containing a single bed, a bucket, and a pregnant woman in a pale blue dress. Emma Sullivan sat motionless, her hands resting protectively over her swollen belly. 6 months pregnant, once vibrant, now pale and gone. Her eyes, however, remained defiant as they stared directly into the camera lens mounted in the corner. From somewhere above, the muffled sounds of classical music and laughter filtered through the air vents. A charity gala was in full swing, while beneath the guests' feet, a woman fought to keep her sanity. Imagine a world where men who believe themselves untouchable suddenly face consequences. A deep, authoritative voice and tone. This is the story of a billionaire who thought money could buy justice, until he crossed the wrong man. The woman's lips moved slightly, whispering something to her unborn child. A promise, perhaps, or a plan for survival. The basement door opened. The sharp click of expensive shoes echoed down the stairs. Boston's financial district gleamed in the October morning sunlight, glass towers reflecting the clear blue sky. At the center stood the headquarters of Sullivan Global Investments, 42 floors of power and prestige. The building's sleek design spoke of wealth beyond measure, tasteful yet imposing, much like its owner. In the executive boardroom on the top floor, Richard Sullivan stood before floor-to-ceiling windows, gazing at the city spread beneath him. At 45, he cut an impressive figure, 6 feet tall, athletic build maintained by disciplined daily workouts, silver beginning to thread through his dark hair. His custom Tom Ford suit couldn't hide the military bearing earned during his years as a Navy officer. The third quarter returns exceeded projections by 17%. He announced to the room of executives, "Our Asian markets have stabilized, and the European expansion is ahead of schedule." The board members nodded appreciatively. Sullivan Global's meteoric rise had made them all wealthy beyond their dreams. None dared question the CEO's methods. "Now, to more important matters," Richard continued, his voice softening with practiced sincerity. "The Sullivan Foundation's Women and Children Protection Fund has secured an additional $12 million in donations this quarter." The room erupted in applause. Press cameras flashed. Richard's perfectly practiced smile never reached his eyes. "My wife Emma and I believe in creating a safer world for families," he said, gesturing to a large portrait of Emma on the wall, beautiful, vibrant, her hand resting on her pregnant belly. The image had been taken 4 months earlier. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here today. Doctor's orders for her high-risk pregnancy. The reporters nodded sympathetically, unaware that at this exact moment, Emma Sullivan lay trapped in a steel cage 30 feet below their Sullivan family estate. "Mr. Sullivan, how does your military background influence your philanthropic work?" a reporter asked. Richard's expression grew appropriately solemn. "The Navy taught me that protection requires strength and vigilance. When I see vulnerable women and children, I feel the same duty to protect that I felt serving this great country." The perfect soundbite, delivered with just the right amount of patriotic fervor. As the press conference continued, the screen split to show Emma in the basement cage, the juxtaposition jarring and deliberate. Her pale fingers traced small circles on her belly, her eyes fixed on the single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. The man publicly championing the protection of women while privately imprisoning his pregnant wife. Boston, 5 years earlier. The TechSpark Innovation Conference buzzed with energy as entrepreneurs showcased their startups to potential investors. The dot-com era might have crashed decades ago, but tech enthusiasm had returned stronger than ever, though veterans of the 90s boom maintained healthy skepticism this time around. Among the presenters stood Emma Garrison, 32 years old, her vibrant red hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, dressed in a modest but stylish black dress rather than the typical Silicon Valley casual wear. Her booth, smaller than most, displayed a simple sign, "Minecraft Design, Reimagining Creative Intelligence." Imagine software that doesn't just execute your design commands, but anticipates them, Emma explained to the small crowd gathered. Her voice carried confidence without arrogance. Minecraft analyzes your past work, recognizes patterns in your creative process, and suggests solutions before you even realize you need them. She demonstrated the software on a large monitor, her hands moving gracefully across the interface. The program responded intuitively, almost as if reading her mind. This isn't just another AI design tool, she continued. It's a true creative partner that learns your unique style and helps you push boundaries without losing your artistic voice. Most of the audience nodded politely, impressed but moving on to flashier displays. Only one man remained, studying both Emma Beam and her technology with intense focus. Richard Sullivan approached after the crowd dispersed, hand extended. Remarkable technology, Ms. Garrison. You've solved a problem most designers don't even realize they have. Emma shook his hand, noting his firm grip and expensive watch. Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. Richard Sullivan. The name meant nothing to her then. She didn't follow financial news or track billionaire lists. Your technology has potential far beyond graphic design, he said. Would you join me for dinner to discuss possible applications? Emma hesitated. She'd met enough overconfident investors to recognize the common mix of interest in her technology and interest in her. Yet something about his direct approach intrigued her. I prefer to discuss business over lunch, she replied. He smiled, appreciating her boundaries. Lunch it is. That first meeting spawned others. Richard proved knowledgeable about both technology and art, discussing Renaissance masters and coding architecture with equal passion. His interest seemed genuine, his respect for her work apparent. What Emma couldn't know was that Richard had researched her thoroughly before the conference. A classified folder in his private office contained every detail of Emma's life: her childhood in Connecticut, her education at RISD, her failed startup attempts before Minecraft. Most importantly, it contained a valuation report estimating Minecraft's potential worth at $750 million if developed for enterprise applications. Richard's pursuit was calculated from the first handshake. The technology she had developed could revolutionize data pattern recognition across industries: banking, defense, surveillance. The woman who created it was simply part of the acquisition. The Sullivan estate sprawled across 5 acres in Massachusetts, a modernist mansion of steel, glass, and stone. Its exterior projected openness while concealing sophisticated security systems that would make military installations envious. In Richard's private study, Sophia Reed organized financial documents. At 38, Sophia served officially as Richard's executive assistant. Unofficially, she was his mistress, confidant, and accomplice. Her tailored dress emphasized her athletic figure, her blonde hair pulled into a severe bun. The transfer documents are ready, she said, sliding a folder across the mahogany desk. Once Emma signs these, Minecraft's intellectual property transfers completely to Sullivan Global's new subsidiary. Richard reviewed the papers, his expression calculating. And if she continues to refuse? Sophia's smile held no warmth. Then we proceed with contingency plan B. The medication dosage has been increased as you requested. Dr. Morris has added his notes about her deteriorating mental condition to her medical file. And the prenatal records? Modified. Any unusual blood work will be attributed to her condition. Richard nodded, satisfied. The pregnancy was unexpected, but it provides useful cover. A woman's mental health can become so fragile during these delicate times. A knock interrupted them. Catherine Wilson, the estate's head housekeeper, entered carrying a tea service. At 55, Catherine had served wealthy families for decades, her unassuming presence making her practically invisible to employers who saw staff as furniture. Your afternoon tea, sir, she said, her eyes carefully downcast as she arranged the service. Thank you, Catherine, Richard replied dismissively. How is Mrs. Sullivan today? Catherine's hands remained steady as she poured the tea. Resting, sir. I've administered her medication as Dr. Morris prescribed. Richard nodded, already returning to his documents. Ensure she eats something. The baby requires proper nutrition, regardless of her appetite. Yes, sir, Catherine replied, backing out of the room. What Richard failed to notice was the slight tremble in Catherine's left hand, or the way her eyes lingered momentarily on the documents spread across his desk. He certainly didn't know that Catherine Wilson had once worked for the Garrison family when Emma was a child, or that she had secured employment with the Sullivans deliberately after becoming concerned about Emma's sudden isolation. As Catherine walked down the hallway, her hand slipped into her pocket, confirming the presence of the small recording device she'd activated before entering Richard's study. The medication made time blur for Emma. Days melted into nights, reality warped by the drugs forced into her system. Moments of clarity came unpredictably, like brief surfacing from underwater before being pulled back into the depths. In one such moment of lucidity, Emma had discovered the truth. 3 months ago, while Richard attended an overseas conference, she had found herself unexpectedly clear-headed. The household staff had mistakenly skipped her evening vitamins. With mind unclouded, she'd used her brief freedom to access Richard's private server. Her technology background made bypassing his passwords simple. People always chose meaningful dates or names. In his case, Achilles 0428 referenced his military call sign and the date of his first major acquisition. What she discovered shattered her world. Financial records showed Richard using Minecraft's core technology to develop surveillance software sold to authoritarian regimes. Emails detailed his plans to have her declared mentally incompetent once the pregnancy reached viability. Most disturbing were folders containing information on his previous wife, a woman Emma had been told died in a car accident, but whose disappearance now appeared suspicious. Emma had copied what files she could to a hidden server, but Richard returned unexpectedly. He discovered her in his office, the evidence of her snooping clear on the computer screen. That night marked her first in the basement cage. The steel door to the basement opened. Emma looked up, her mind fighting through the fog of medications. Richard descended the stairs first, followed by Sophia, both dressed in evening wear, Richard in a tuxedo, Sophia in a crimson gown that seemed deliberately chosen to contrast with Emma's stained blue dress. "How are you feeling today, dear?" Richard asked, his voice carrying the false concern he might use with a misbehaving pet. Emma remained silent, conserving her energy. The baby had been moving less today, concerning her. "The Sullivan Foundation Gala was a tremendous success," he continued, circling the cage. "Everyone asked about you. I told them you're on strict bed rest. They all send their best wishes." Sophia smirked, pouring red wine into a crystal glass. "Your absence actually worked in our favor." The sympathy for Richard, caring for his high-risk pregnant wife while running both his company and charity, was palpable. "The Minecraft acquisition announcement is scheduled for next week," Richard said, his tone shifting to business. "The documents require your signature. This can end today, Emma. Sign the papers, and you can return upstairs to a comfortable room for the remainder of your pregnancy." Emma finally spoke, her voice raspy from disuse. "And after I give birth?" Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. "We'll discuss appropriate arrangements. Perhaps a private care facility in Switzerland. Somewhere discreet where you can receive proper treatment for your condition." "My condition being that I discovered you're selling my technology to track and imprison political dissidents?" Richard's expression hardened. "Your paranoid delusions are precisely why you need professional care." Emma's hands protectively covered her belly. "I won't sign." Sophia approached the cage, wineglass tilted. "Such stubbornness. Perhaps this will help change your mind." The red wine splashed through the bars, staining Emma's dress and the thin mattress beneath her. The cold liquid shocked her system, momentarily clearing the medication fog. "Record that," Richard instructed Sophia, who already had her phone out, filming. Evidence of her self-destructive behavior, spilling things, refusing to eat, talking to herself. Emma looked directly into Sophia's camera, her eyes suddenly clear and defiant. "I'm not sick. I'm being held prisoner." Richard sighed theatrically. "More paranoid delusions. Make sure to get this, Sophia. Dr. Morris will want to adjust her medication again." As they continued documenting their fabricated evidence, Emma noticed something. The security camera in the corner of the basement had turned slightly, its small red light blinking in an unusual pattern. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short, SOS in Morse code. Someone was watching, someone who understood she needed help. Hope flickered faintly, like the basement's unreliable light bulb. Michael Garrison strode through the FBI training facility in Quantico, his presence commanding a respect from agents half his age. At 58, his hair had gone completely gray, but his physical condition remained impeccable. 25 years with the FBI's hostage rescue team, including 15 as a team leader, had etched discipline into every aspect of his bearing. Now running his own security consulting firm, Michael maintained close relationships with his former colleagues, particularly those who shared his Navy SEAL background. The brotherhood forged in Bud's training decades ago remained unbreakable. His phone vibrated with an encrypted message. Few people had this direct line to him. The message contained only an address and the words, "Regarding Emma, urgent." Michael's jaw tightened. His half-sister Emma had gradually disappeared from his life after marrying Richard Sullivan 5 years ago. Initially, Michael had attributed her increasing absence to natural life changes and her pregnancy. Recently, though, his instincts signaled something more sinister. 3 attempts to visit her had been rebuffed with polite but firm excuses. The address led to a small coffee shop in Cambridge, deliberately chosen for its lack of security cameras and background noise that would defeat recording devices. Catherine Wilson waited at a corner table, nervously checking her watch. "Mrs. Wilson?" Michael approached, instantly assessing her as non-threatening but deeply anxious. Catherine looked up, relief washing over her face. "Mr. Garrison, thank you for coming. You mentioned my sister." His tone remained neutral but carried unmistakable authority. Catherine glanced around before sliding a USB drive across the table. "I worked for your family when Emma was young. I recognized her immediately when I applied for the housekeeper position at the Sullivan estate 3 years ago." Michael's expression remained impassive, but his eyes sharpened. "Why contact me now?" "Because now she's in the basement." Catherine's voice trembled. "In a cage." Michael's hand tightened around the flash drive. "Explain." "It started gradually. Mr. Sullivan began controlling her schedule, her medications. Then she became pregnant, and he increased her isolation. He adds sedatives to her food. I've been documenting everything, but 3 days ago, she discovered something on his computer. Now she's locked in a basement cage, being recorded to create evidence of mental instability." Michael had interviewed enough witnesses to recognize truth. Catherine wasn't lying. "This contains video?" he asked, indicating the drive. "Yes, from the security system. I can access it through my cleaning duties. Mr. Sullivan doesn't realize I understand technology. He sees only an older housekeeper." Michael pocketed the drive. "You've taken a significant risk." Catherine's eyes hardened. "I watched my own sister suffer domestic abuse for 12 years until it killed her. I won't stand by again." Michael nodded once, respect evident. "I'll need ongoing information." "There's more," Catherine said. "Emma's company, Minecraft. Mr. Sullivan is announcing its acquisition next week. He's been forcing her to sign transfer documents." "Technology theft," Michael noted. "Federal jurisdiction. The gala is in 5 days. After that, I overheard plans to move her to a private facility in Switzerland." Michael stood. "You'll hear from me within 24 hours. Continue as normal. Document everything." As he left the coffee shop, Michael's military training kicked in automatically, assessing sightlines, checking for surveillance, planning contingencies. The brother who had spent decades protecting his country now had a more personal protection mission. Emma had always been the family's bright light, intellectually gifted, creatively brilliant, unfailingly kind. Their 15-year age gap and different mothers had created distance, but never diminished his sense of responsibility toward her. After their father died, that responsibility had only deepened. In his car, Michael inserted the flash drive into a secure laptop. The video began with static, then focused on the basement cage. The timestamp showed 2:17 a.m. 3 nights ago. Emma sat on the thin mattress, her pregnant belly prominent under her dress, whispering something to her unborn child. The door opened. Richard Sullivan and a blonde woman entered. Their conversation with Emma played out. Threats veiled as concern, wine deliberately spilled, evidence manufactured. Michael's expression remained stone, but his eyes burned with cold fury. This was no longer just about rescuing his sister. This was about justice. The final moments of the video captured Emma looking directly at the camera, her eyes suddenly alert and determined despite her situation. This wasn't a broken woman. This was someone fighting to survive. Michael made 3 calls in rapid succession. First to Dr. Sarah Chen Emma's former college roommate and now an obstetric specialist. Second, to David Reynolds, former federal prosecutor and specialist in corporate fraud. Third, to FBI Special Agent James Martinez, who had been investigating unusual financial patterns at Sullivan Global for months without sufficient evidence for warrants. The pieces were falling into place. Sullivan had chosen the wrong woman to victimize and the wrong family to cross. Michael watched the video one more time, studying the security setup, mentally mapping the basement layout. His final call was to former SEAL teammates now working in his security firm. Mobilize Bravo protocol, he instructed. Target extraction, 5-day window, high security location. As night fell over Boston, two separate plans developed. One in a mansion where a billionaire prepared to destroy all evidence of his crimes, and another in a modest security office where a former FBI agent prepared to dismantle an empire. In the basement cage, Emma Sullivan closed her eyes, one hand protectively over her belly, the other forming a fist of determination. The light flickered above her, shadows dancing across the steel bars. She whispered to her unborn child, "Stay strong, someone is coming." The security camera blinked its red light 3 times in confirmation. The October rain fell in sheets across Boston, transforming the city's elegant streets into glistening mirrors. Michael Garrison sat in his parked SUV, watching droplets trace patterns down the windshield as he absorbed what he had just witnessed on the USB drive. The wipers swept across the glass in a steady rhythm that matched his heartbeat. Controlled, deliberate, hiding the storm within. Inside his temporary command center, a converted warehouse in South Boston, a team assembled with military precision. The space bore no corporate logos, no identifying marks, just state-of-the-art equipment, tactical gear, and a growing evidence board centered around Richard Sullivan's photograph. Michael placed his satellite phone on the conference table, activating the secure speaker. "Everyone's here," he said, his voice carrying the unmistakable authority of a man who had led teams into the world's most dangerous situations. "I've reviewed the footage," Dr. Sarah Chen's voice came through clearly. At 45, she was one of Boston's most respected obstetricians specializing in high-risk pregnancies. She had been Emma's roommate at RISD before pursuing medicine. Based on Emma's physical appearance and movements, she's being administered benzodiazepines, likely lorazepam or something similar. "Effects on the pregnancy?" Michael asked, his tone professional but undercut with concern. "Potentially serious," Sarah replied. "Prolonged use can cause fetal growth restriction, respiratory issues at birth. If she's 6 months along, as Catherine indicated, we need to address this quickly." David Reynolds, the former federal prosecutor, studied the legal documents Catherine had managed to photograph. At 60, his silver hair and patrician features belied a mind that had prosecuted some of the biggest corporate fraud cases of the early 2000s. Sullivan's creating a paper trail to declare Emma mentally incompetent. He's fabricating medical records, witness statements, even video evidence. "Standard playbook for controlling wealthy spouses," added FBI Special Agent James Martinez from his position near the evidence board. At 52, Martinez had spent the last 5 years in the Financial Crimes Division. "We've been tracking Sullivan Global for 18 months. Unusual money movements, offshore transfers, shell companies. But we've lacked probable cause for warrants." Michael stood, moving to the large tactical screen, displaying the Sullivan estate blueprint. "Emma's the key to everything, not just as a victim, but as our gateway into Sullivan's operation." He expanded the basement section of the blueprint. "Catherine's intelligence puts Emma here. Steel cage in the center of a renovated wine cellar. 2 access points, main stairs from the kitchen, service entrance from the eastern wing. Security includes motion sensors, cameras, and electronic locks requiring both keycard and biometric scan." The team absorbed this information in silence. These were not amateurs impressed by security systems. These were professionals calculating solutions. "Martinez," Michael continued, "what's your timeline on getting federal warrants?" The FBI agent shook his head. "Sullivan's connections run deep. Senator Blackwood chairs the Judiciary Committee and plays golf with Sullivan weekly. Judge Harriman, who would likely get the warrant request, attended Sullivan's wedding. Without overwhelming evidence, we need to operate assuming no official support initially," Michael concluded. He turned to the blueprint again. "Catherine reports Sullivan is planning a major foundation gala in 5 days. He'll announce the acquisition of Emma's company, Minecraft. David Reynolds looked up sharply. Minecraft? The pattern recognition software? That's what this is about? Michael nodded. Emma developed proprietary algorithms that apparently have applications beyond their original design purpose. Defense contracts, surveillance systems, financial modeling. That technology would be worth billions in the right markets, Martinez noted, legal and otherwise. Which explains Sullivan's offshore network, David added. He's positioning to sell to buyers who can't purchase American technology legally. Michael's satellite phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Catherine. Are moving to Swiss facility immediately after gala. Private medical transport arranged. Documents ready. The room fell silent as the message displayed on the main screen. We just lost 2 days, Michael said, his voice calm despite the escalation. New timeline, 48 hours until extraction. In the basement cage, Emma fought through the mental fog that had become her constant companion. The medication doses had increased since her confrontation with Richard. Sometimes consciousness came in fragments, brief moments of clarity before the darkness pulled her under again. During one such moment, she focused on the security camera. Its small red light had been blinking in patterns that couldn't be coincidental. 3 short, 3 long, 3 short, the universal distress signal. Someone was watching. Someone understood. The basement door opened again. Emma tensed, expecting Richard or Sophia, but instead Catherine entered carrying a food tray. Dinner, Mrs. Sullivan, she announced loudly, her eyes darting to the camera in the corner. As Catherine set the tray on the floor by the cage, she whispered, Your brother knows. Help is coming. Eat only what I bring directly. Emma's heart surged with hope for the first time in months. Michael, her half-brother, the ex-FBI agent who had always seemed larger than life to her. They had grown apart after her marriage. Richard had made sure of that, but the childhood bond remained. Michael had taught her Morse code during summer vacations, showing her how to communicate in emergencies. When? Emma whispered, barely moving her lips. Soon, Catherine murmured, adjusting the tray contents. They're monitoring your medications. I've been replacing some with harmless substitutes, but be ready. When it happens, you'll need your strength. The door at the top of the stairs creaked. Catherine immediately stood, reverting to her housekeeper demeanor. I'll return for the tray in 1 hour, Mrs. Sullivan. Sophia appeared at the bottom of the stairs, her suspicious gaze shifting between Catherine and Emma. Taking a long time for a simple food delivery, aren't you? Catherine lowered her eyes respectfully. Just checking if Mrs. Sullivan needed anything else, Ms. Reed. The pregnancy makes her uncomfortable on that small bed. Sophia approached the cage, her heels clicking sharply against the concrete. How thoughtful. I'll take over from here. The dismissal was clear. Catherine nodded and retreated up the stairs, her expression betraying nothing. When the door closed, Sophia circled the cage like a predator. Richard suspects Catherine may be too sympathetic to you. She'll be replaced after the gala. Emma remained silent, her eyes fixed on a point beyond Sophia. Still playing the dignified prisoner? Sophia laughed. You know what I admire about you, Emma? Your delusion that you matter, that your little software company is worth all this trouble. She tapped her perfectly manicured nails against the steel bars. Minecraft's technology was impressive, I'll grant you that, but it was never going to reach its potential in your hands. You think too small, design software for creative types? She scoffed. Richard recognized its real value immediately. Emma finally spoke, her voice steadier than she felt. As surveillance technology for authoritarian regimes. Sophia's eyebrows rose slightly. So you did find the server files. I wondered how much you discovered before Richard caught you. Enough to know you're selling to blacklisted countries through shell companies. The beauty of capitalism, Sophia smiled. One algorithm repurposed for facial recognition, financial modeling, and predictive behavior analysis. The Chinese contract alone is worth $300 million. Emma's hands moved protectively over her belly. People will die because of how you've weaponized my work. People always die, Sophia replied dispassionately. At least this way it's profitable. She glanced at her watch. Richard wants the transfer documents signed tomorrow. This is your last chance for a comfortable arrangement. Otherwise, she let the threat hang unfinished. After Sophia left, Emma carefully examined the food tray. Catherine had positioned the bread roll slightly apart from the other items. Breaking it open, Emma found a small white pill hidden inside. Not her usual sedative, but something else. Trusting her former nanny's intentions, she swallowed it with water, then pushed the rest of the food aside. Whatever came next, she needed her mind clear. In Michael's command center, the team had expanded. Two former SEAL teammates had arrived, Jackson Cooper and Marcus Way, both in their early 50s, both with the watchful eyes of men who had spent decades evaluating threats. Sullivan's security team consists of 8 professionals, ex-military, rotating shifts, Cooper reported, displaying surveillance photos on the main screen, plus household staff of 12, most living off-premises except for the housekeeper, Catherine Wilson, and the chef. Way continued the briefing. We've identified 3 transportation routes they could use to move Emma to the private airfield. Sullivan maintains a medical transport helicopter and 2 ambulances through his foundation. Dr. Chen studied the medical documents Catherine had managed to photograph. These records are extensively falsified. They show Emma with a history of bipolar disorder, with psychotic features, multiple hospitalizations that never happened, medication trials that never occurred. Sullivan's thoroughness works against him, David Reynolds noted. Too perfect a paper trail creates its own suspicion. Real medical histories have inconsistencies. Agent Martinez hung up his secure phone with a troubled expression. Just got confirmation from my source in the Boston PD. Sullivan made a substantial donation to their benevolent fund last week. He's also filed a preemptive report about his wife's deteriorating mental condition and potential risk to herself or the baby. Michael absorbed this information with growing concern. He's laying groundwork for either Emma's disappearance or her death. The room fell silent at the implication. Catherine's last message indicated Emma's food is being heavily drugged, Michael continued. She's replacing what she can, but we need to assume Emma will be impaired during extraction. Dr. Chen opened her medical kit. I've prepared flumazenil injections to reverse benzodiazepine effects if needed, but we'll need to monitor her carefully. Sudden withdrawal could cause seizures, especially during pregnancy. Michael turned to the estate blueprint again. We need to move faster. Sullivan's preparing contingencies we hadn't anticipated. He looked at his team. New plan, we move tomorrow night. Way raised an eyebrow. Security will be at peak staffing. The foundation executives are meeting at the estate. Exactly, Michael replied. More people means more movement, more opportunities to blend. Catherine reports Richard and Sophia have dinner reservations downtown at 8. That gives us a window. Cooper studied the security rotation schedule. We'll need to neutralize at least 4 guards without raising alarms. And we'll need a convincing reason to transport Emma out once we reach her, Dr. Chen added. Michael's expression remained impassive, but his eyes carried determination that his team recognized from past operations. This wasn't just a mission. This was family. Martinez, he said, turning to the FBI agent, what's the status on the financial investigation? Martinez spread several documents on the table. We've traced transfers from Sullivan Global subsidiaries to offshore accounts in the Caymans, then to shell companies in Cyprus, finally to accounts linked to defense contractors in restricted markets. Enough for warrants? Getting closer. We need the connection to Emma's technology to prove the intellectual property theft. Michael nodded. That's our parallel mission, Banditan. While we extract Emma, we need access to Sullivan's private server. The evidence Catherine mentioned will tie everything together. The satellite phone buzzed again. Catherine's message was brief and alarming. Emergency R suspects. Moving E tonight to secondary location. 11 p.m. Michael's decision was immediate. We move now. Full tactical response. Cooper, prep the medical transport. Way, interference packages for their security system. Martinez, I need FBI backup on standby even without warrants. Humanitarian exception. The team mobilized with practiced efficiency. This was no longer a planned extraction. It was a rescue operation. Catherine Wilson moved through the Sullivan mansion with deliberate calm, despite her racing heart. 30 years of service in wealthy households had taught her to be invisible, to move without drawing attention. Tonight, that skill might save Emma's life. She had overheard Richard's conversation with Sophia just minutes earlier. Their voices had carried from his study to the hallway where she had been dusting, another advantage of being seen as furniture rather than a person. The brother is a complication we don't need, Richard had said, his voice tight with controlled anger. Security flagged his inquiries, former FBI military background. The Swiss facility is ready, Sophia had replied. The medical transport is prepared for tonight. Paperwork shows a mental health emergency requiring specialized care. And if there are complications during transport, the consent forms you had her sign cover everything, including heroic measures for the baby if the mother is deemed unsuitable. Catherine had slipped away before they could discover her presence, sending her urgent message to Michael before continuing her duties with forced normalcy. Now she made her way to the security monitoring room under the pretense of delivering evening coffee to Walter, the night supervisor. "You're a lifesaver, Mrs. Wilson," Walter said, accepting the mug gratefully. At 62, he was the oldest member of the security team, more administrator than operative. "Happy to help," Catherine replied with a practiced smile. "Mr. Sullivan mentioned you might be monitoring a special medical transport tonight." Walter nodded, his attention already returning to the sports highlights playing on his phone. "Yeah, something about Mrs. Sullivan going to some fancy hospital. Poor thing's been having a rough pregnancy." Catherine noted the 4 security camera feeds displayed on the main monitor, showing the estate's perimeter. "Such a shame. I'll bring some sandwiches before the transport arrives." "Appreciate it," Walter mumbled, already reabsorbed in his game. Catherine left, pulling the small signal jammer from her pocket, the device Michael had arranged for her to receive through a grocery delivery. She wouldn't activate it until she received confirmation the rescue team was in position. In her quarters, Catherine packed a small bag with her essential documents and photographs. After tonight, her 30-year career as a household manager would be over. She had no illusions about Richard Sullivan's reach or vindictiveness. Her phone vibrated with a text from an unknown number. "Guardian angels arriving. 20 minutes. Eastern Gate. Prepare the path." Catherine took a deep breath, slipped the signal jammer into her pocket, and headed for the kitchen to prepare Walter's sandwiches. The private road leading to the Sullivan estate wound through manicured woodlands, security cameras disguised among the trees. What the cameras didn't detect was the specialized communications van parked half a mile away, its ordinary commercial exterior hiding cutting-edge equipment. Inside, Marcus Way monitored the estate's security feeds, which they had managed to piggyback without triggering alerts. "Guard rotation complete," he reported into his secure headset. "Eastgate team changing shifts now." Michael checked his watch. The timing was critical. "Status on Sullivan?" "Still in his study," Way confirmed. "Car scheduled to leave for restaurant in 45 minutes. "We're not waiting," Michael decided. "Catherine confirms they're expediting the transport. We need to reach Emma before they move her." Cooper's voice came through the comm system. "Medical transport in position. Local PD already informed of a training exercise in the area." Michael nodded to Martinez, who had insisted on joining the extraction team despite the professional risk. The FBI agent had seen too many wealthy abusers escape justice to stand aside now. "Remember," Michael told the team, "non-lethal approach. These guards are just doing their jobs. But we extract Emma at all costs." They moved through the woods with practiced stealth, 4 shadows advancing on predetermined paths. Each carried non-lethal weaponry and wore dark tactical gear without insignia. Michael's team had performed hostage extractions in far more hostile environments than a New England estate. Way's voice guided them through their earpieces. "Eastern Gate camera looping how? You have 90 seconds. The first challenge came at the perimeter wall, 12 feet of ornamental stone with electronic sensors. Way had identified a 3-second gap in the detection grid near an old oak tree whose branches extended over the wall. The team scaled the wall precisely at this location, dropping silently onto the manicured lawn inside. "Pausing rotation for maintenance. Monitor 3 is down, Monitor 4 switching to Sector 2. Catherine's voice came through their comms. She was creating distractions in the security office, directing attention away from their approach. They advanced across the grounds in silence, using the estate's elaborate landscaping as cover. The autumn rain worked in their favor, reducing visibility and masking sound. Within minutes, they reached the East Wing service entrance, the most direct route to the basement according to the blueprints. Cooper approached the keycard scanner, with a device designed to replicate authorized credentials. The red light turned green, but the door remained locked. Biometric required, Michael noted, unsurprised. Plan B. Martinez produced what appeared to be a maintenance override module, attaching it to a service panel beside the door. This was the riskier approach, more likely to trigger security alerts. Way's voice came through urgently. Movement in the main house. Sullivan's on the move, heading toward the basement stairs. Michael made an instant decision. We abort the stealth approach, direct intervention. The team immediately shifted tactics, moving around the east wing toward the main house's kitchen entrance. If Sullivan was heading to the basement, they needed to intercept immediately. Inside the mansion, Richard Sullivan checked his watch as he descended the main staircase, Sophia beside him. The transport team is 15 minutes out, she informed him. Dr. Morris will meet us at the airfield. Richard straightened his already perfect tie. Ensure the sedatives are adequate for the entire journey. I don't want any scenes during transfer. Already arranged, Sophia assured him. The documentation shows she attempted self-harm, requiring emergency intervention. They reached the main floor just as Catherine emerged from the kitchen. Mr. Sullivan, she said, her composure remarkable given the circumstances, there seems to be an issue with the East Wing alarm system. Walter asked if you could verify the override code. Richard frowned. Now? We're preparing for Mrs. Sullivan's transfer. It will just take a moment, sir. He's concerned it might trigger a full security alert if not addressed. Richard sighed with irritation. Fine. Tell him I'll be there momentarily. As he changed direction toward the security office, Sophia continued toward the basement door. I'll prepare Emma for transport. Catherine followed Richard, creating crucial separation between the two conspirators. Outside, Michael's team received this development through their earpieces. Sullivan diverted temporarily. Primary target heading to basement alone, proceeding with direct basement access. They reached the external basement entrance, a storm door designed for maintenance access, its heavy security belying its utilitarian appearance. Cooper attached shaped charges to the electronic lock while Martinez kept watch. Charges set. 3, 2, 1. The small controlled explosion destroyed the lock mechanism with minimal noise. Michael pulled the door open and the team descended into darkness, tactical lights illuminating their path. Emma heard the basement door open and tensed, expecting Richard's methodical footsteps. Instead, Sophia's sharp heels clicked down the stairs. She carried a small medical bag and wore a triumphant expression. Change of plans, Sophia announced. You're taking a little trip tonight instead of after the gala. Emma remained silent, assessing her options. The white pill Catherine had given her had cleared her mind somewhat, but her limbs felt heavy, uncoordinated. Sophia opened the medical bag, removing a syringe. Just a little something to make the journey smoother. Can't have you making a scene when the medical transport arrives. You can't keep drugging me forever, Emma said, her voice stronger than expected. Sophia smirked. We don't need forever, just until after delivery. Richard is particularly interested in ensuring his child receives proper care, even if the mother is deemed unsuitable. The implication was clear. Emma wouldn't be returning from Switzerland. As Sophia approached the cage with the key card, a muffled sound came from the far end of the basement. Both women froze, looking toward the maintenance access door that was supposedly secured with multiple locks. The door burst open. 4 figures in tactical gear entered, weapons raised. Federal agents, put the syringe down, Martinez shouted, though they had no official capacity in this operation. Sophia's training kicked in instantly. She dropped the syringe, simultaneously pressing a panic button on her bracelet. Alarms blared throughout the mansion. Michael advanced directly to the cage, his focus entirely on Emma. Even through his tactical gear, she recognized him immediately, the same confident presence she remembered from childhood. Michael, she whispered, relief flooding through her. I've got you, he replied, his voice steady despite the chaos erupting around them. Cooper secured Sophia, who had attempted to reach for something in her bag. Martinez disabled the alarm panel, but the damage was done. Sullivan security alerted, Way's voice reported through their comms. Response team mobilizing. 4 minutes to full lockdown. Dadar Chen rushed to the cage, examining Emma through the bars. We need to get her out now. Pulse elevated, pupils dilated. signs of prolonged sedation. Michael turned to Cooper. Get the cage open. Cooper attached a different set of charges to the cage lock, precisely calibrated to destroy the mechanism without risking injury to those inside. The lock disintegrated and Michael pulled the door open. Emma attempted to stand but stumbled. Michael caught her, lifting her carefully. The baby, she murmured, hands protectively covering her belly. We have a doctor with us, Michael assured her, nodding to Dr. Chen, who quickly checked Emma's vital signs. Stable for transport, Chen confirmed, but we need to move now. Security alerts continued blaring throughout the mansion. From their earpieces came Catherine's urgent voice. Sullivan's heading to the basement with guards. Main staircase. Out through the maintenance access, Michael ordered. Martinez, cover our exit. As they maneuvered toward the exit, Emma clutched Michael's arm. The server, she said urgently. Richard's private server in his study. It has everything, the technology theft, the illegal sales, evidence about his first wife. Martinez nodded. We'll come back for it. No time, Michael countered. Catherine? Catherine's voice came through clearly. I can get to the study. The emergency has everyone focused on the basement. Too dangerous, Michael argued. I'm already upstairs, Catherine replied. This is my choice. As the rescue team carried Emma up the maintenance stairs to the grounds, Catherine made her way to Richard's study. The security staff were rushing toward the basement, leaving the upper floors momentarily unguarded. In the study, Catherine located the hidden safe behind a false panel. She had observed Richard accessing it many times while dusting. The combination remained a mystery, but she had come prepared. From her pocket, she produced a small device Michael had given her for emergencies, a compact digital recorder designed to capture audio frequencies beyond human hearing. Richard's safe used a sophisticated audio lock that recognized specific tonal patterns. Catherine played back the recording she had made days earlier while cleaning. The safe clicked open. Inside was a single external hard drive, Richard's private server backup. Catherine grabbed it and slipped it into her uniform pocket just as voices approached in the hallway. She closed the safe, returning the panel to its original position, and resumed dusting as the door burst open. Richard Sullivan entered, his face contorted with rage. Where is she? What happened in the basement? Sir? Catherine feigned confusion. I've been up here cleaning. Is something wrong? Richard's suspicious gaze swept the room, finding nothing out of place. The distant wail of police sirens drew his attention. Stay here, he ordered, rushing back toward the commotion. Catherine waited exactly 30 seconds before making her way toward the servants' staircase. The hard drive pressed against her side like a promise kept. Outside, the extraction team had reached the medical transport vehicle disguised as a private ambulance. Dr. Chen was already attending to Emma inside, administering fluids and monitoring her vital signs. Catherine? Emma asked weakly as Michael climbed aboard. On her way, he assured her, though concern etched his features. Cooper took the driver's seat while Wei monitored the security response through their surveillance equipment. Police sirens approached, real authorities responding to the alarm. We need to move, Cooper urged. Sullivan's security is setting up roadblocks on the main drive. Not without Catherine, Michael insisted. As if summoned by his determination, Catherine appeared at the garden gate, running toward the vehicle. Martinez opened the door, pulling her inside just as headlights swept the area. Drive, Michael ordered. Cooper engaged the emergency lights and siren, the vehicle moving with deliberate but urgent speed. In the back, Catherine handed Michael the hard drive, her expression triumphant despite her breathlessness. Everything he wanted to hide. Emma, lying on the gurney, managed a weak smile. You got my message on the camera, the Morse code. You taught me well, Michael replied, briefly clasping her hand. Rest now. You're safe. As the vehicle turned onto the main road, blending with the genuine emergency vehicles responding to the alarm, Emma closed her eyes. For the first time in months, the darkness that claimed her wasn't induced by drugs, but by the profound relief of finally being free. Behind them, the Sullivan estate blazed with activity. Security teams, police responders, and at the center of the chaos, Richard Sullivan, watching his carefully constructed world begin to unravel, unaware that the evidence that would destroy him completely was already beyond his reach. The rain continued falling, washing away their tracks as they disappeared into the night. Tôi hiểu rằng bạn muốn tôi chỉnh sửa phần thải của câu chuyện video dài khoảng tên hiện tu. Dưới đây là phần bài đã được viết lại để khắc phục những điểm cần cải thiện. The medical transport vehicle sped through the rain-slicked streets of Boston, emergency lights reflecting off wet pavement like scattered rubies. Inside, Dr. Sarah Chen worked methodically, establishing an IV line into Emma's arm while monitoring vital signs on portable equipment. BP is a 100/65, pulse 82, she reported, her practiced hands moving with precision despite the vehicle's movement. Fetal heartbeat strong at 148. Emma lay on the gurney, one hand protectively resting on her belly, the other gripping Michael's with surprising strength. The fog of sedatives was gradually lifting, leaving her mind clearer than it had been in weeks. 6 months of captivity had left her body weakened, but her spirit intact. "Richard," she whispered, her voice hoarse but determined. "He'll come after us. He never loses." Michael's expression remained impassive, but his eyes held cold determination. "Let him try." Through the vehicle's tinted windows, blue and red police lights flashed in the distance behind them, the authorities responding to the security breach at the Sullivan estate. Cooper navigated with professional calm, taking a complex route designed to lose any potential pursuit while maintaining the appearance of a legitimate medical transport. Police chatter indicates Sullivan is claiming a home invasion and kidnapping, Martinez reported, monitoring communications through a secure radio. "He's leveraging his connections in the department." Michael nodded, unsurprised. "How long before roadblocks?" 20 minutes, maybe less. The commissioner's a foundation beneficiary. "We're not going to any hospital," Michael decided, turning to Dr. Chen. "Emma needs a secure location. Can she be safely moved?" Dr. Chen checked Emma's vitals again. "She's stabilizing. The flumazenil is counteracting the benzodiazepines in her system. As long as we maintain medical monitoring, a private facility would be safer than a public hospital where Sullivan has influence." "The ghost clinic?" Cooper suggested from the driver's seat. Michael considered this before nodding, appropriate under the circumstances. Emma's eyes narrowed with confusion. "Ghost clinic?" "A private medical facility in Cambridge," Michael explained. "Officially, it doesn't exist. It was established to treat operatives who couldn't risk official medical channels, staffed by doctors who understand discretion." Emma's lips curved in a faint smile. "Your world has always been full of shadows and secrets. I never imagined I'd need them." "You'd be surprised how often the shadows protect those in the light," Michael replied, his voice softening momentarily. Catherine, seated at the rear of the vehicle, clutched the stolen hard drive like a talisman. "What about this? If it contains what Emma believes, it's our insurance policy." Martinez extended his hand. "I should take custody as an FBI agent. Chain of evidence." "No," Michael interrupted. "Sullivan has a reach even within federal agencies. We need to verify and copy the contents before it goes into official channels." Emma's eyes met Catherine's, a silent understanding passing between them. In the months of Emma's captivity, Catherine had become her lifeline, first as the nanny she remembered from childhood, then as her sole ally within the Sullivan estate. The older woman had risked everything based on nothing more than recognition of patterns she'd seen before in her own sister's abuse. The vehicle turned onto a narrow street lined with unremarkable industrial buildings. Cooper flashed the headlights in a specific pattern as they approached a loading dock attached to what appeared to be an abandoned warehouse. The metal door rose silently, admitting the vehicle before closing behind them. Inside, the contrast was striking. The warehouse exterior concealed a modern medical facility, limited in size but equipped with state-of-the-art technology. Medical personnel in scrubs moved with quiet efficiency, preparing a treatment room as if they had been expecting this arrival. "Welcome to the Ghost Clinic," Michael said, as attendants carefully transferred Emma to a wheelchair. "Established after 9/11 for situations exactly like this, when powerful interests make conventional protection impossible." Emma took in the facility with widening eyes. "You've been planning for this possibility." A shadow crossed Michael's face. "I've been watching Sullivan for 3 years. When you started becoming increasingly isolated, I activated surveillance. I should have moved sooner." Emma reached for his hand again. "You came when it mattered most. And I wasn't just waiting passively, you know. I managed to create a hidden partition on Richard's server with copies of incriminating files before he caught me. I've been mapping the basement security systems for weeks, looking for vulnerabilities. Michael's expression shifted to one of respect. You were always the clever one in the family. Had to be, Emma replied, her voice steadying. When your jailer thinks you're just a creative artist with no technical knowledge, it gives you an advantage. He never realized I understood exactly how the security systems in the house worked. At the Sullivan estate, chaos reigned. Police officers secured the perimeter while private security guards stood at awkward attention, caught between their employer's rage and official authority. In the grand foyer, Richard Sullivan spoke intensely with Police Commissioner Lawrence Hayes, a longtime beneficiary of Sullivan Foundation grants. My wife has been kidnapped by armed intruders, Richard insisted, his voice controlled despite the fury in his eyes. She's 6 months pregnant and mentally unstable. Every minute matters. Hayes nodded gravely. We've issued an APB on the vehicle. All exits from the city are being monitored. This isn't some random kidnapping, Richard continued. This was targeted, professional, military precision. Sophia approached, her expression carefully composed despite the bruise forming on her cheek where Cooper had restrained her. The security footage shows at least 4 individuals in tactical gear, she reported. They disabled most cameras, but we have partial images. Richard's jaw tightened. Her brother. This has Michael Garrison written all over it. The former FBI agent? Hayes asked, surprise evident in his tone. He's delusional, Richard explained smoothly. Believes my care for Emma during her mental health crisis amounts to abuse. He's never accepted her diagnosis of bipolar disorder with psychotic features. Sophia handed Hayes a thick medical file. Mrs. Sullivan's complete psychiatric history. As you'll see, her condition deteriorated significantly during pregnancy. She became paranoid, claiming her husband was imprisoning her, drugging her. Classic persecutory delusions. Hayes flipped through the documents with a frown. And the basement? My officers reported what appeared to be a containment area. Richard sighed heavily, the perfect picture of a concerned husband pushed to desperate measures. A safe room, on the advice of her psychiatrist, Dr. Morris. When Emma became a danger to herself and the baby, we created a controlled environment. The steel enclosure prevents self-harm during episodes. Everything was done under medical supervision. The police commissioner studied Richard's face, years of political accommodation warring with professional instinct. These are serious measures, Richard. For a serious condition, Richard countered. I love my wife, Lawrence. Everything I've done has been to protect her and our unborn child. Now she's been taken by individuals with no medical training, no understanding of her condition. She could be dead before morning if her medication isn't properly managed. Hayes nodded slowly, political reality reasserting itself. We'll find her, Richard. Every officer in the department will be looking. As the commissioner departed to coordinate the search, Richard turned to Sophia, his facade of concern instantly replaced by cold calculation. Activate our private security contractors. I want surveillance on all properties owned by Garrison or his associates. Offer a $2 million reward for information leading to Emma's location. Already in progress, Sophia confirmed. What about the server? If they accessed your private study? Catherine, Richard interrupted, realization dawning. The housekeeper. She's not among the staff being questioned. Sophia's expression hardened. She helped them. Find out everything about her. Family, friends, previous employment. She's the key to locating Emma. Richard checked his watch. And contact our friends at the State Department. I want Garrison's passport flagged immediately. As Richard issued orders, a young security technician approached hesitantly. Mr. Sullivan, we've completed the initial review of security footage. There's something you should see. In the security office, grainy footage showed Catherine Wilson entering Richard's study during the chaos, accessing his hidden safe, and removing the external hard drive. Richard's composure finally cracked. His fist slammed into the nearest wall with enough force to crack the plaster. Find them, he growled, all pretense of the concerned husband evaporating. Whatever it costs, whoever you have to pay. I want my wife and that drive back before sunrise. A second security officer entered, his expression grim. Sir, there's something else. The basement security logs show multiple access attempts through Emma's credentials over the past 2 months. Someone, likely Mrs. Sullivan herself, was testing the system vulnerabilities. Richard's eyes narrowed. She was planning this all along. The logs indicate she accessed your private server several times when your authentication was still active. She may have copied files. The revelation that Emma had been actively working against him even while imprisoned only intensified Richard's fury. The woman he had sought to control had been anticipating her moment all along. In the ghost clinic, Emma underwent a comprehensive medical assessment. Dr. Chen worked alongside Dr. Jonathan Mercer, the facility's director, a former military surgeon who had treated casualties in Afghanistan and Iraq before joining this covert operation. Blood work confirmed sustained benzodiazepine exposure, Dr. Mercer reported, studying results on a tablet. Lorazepam primarily with traces of other sedatives. Fortunately, fetal development appears normal despite the medications. Emma sat upright on the examination bed, changed into clean scrubs, color gradually returning to her face. "The baby's really okay," Darchen smiled reassuringly. "Healthy and active. The ultrasound shows normal growth, strong heartbeat. Babies are remarkably resilient." Relief washed over Emma's features. "I talk to her every day. Promised I'd get her out." "Her?" Michael asked from his position by the door. A faint smile touched Emma's lips. "Just a feeling. Richard wanted a boy, of course. Future heir to the Sullivan Empire." "Did he hurt you physically?" Michael asked, the question he'd been avoiding. Emma shook her head. "Not directly. He needed me healthy enough to carry the baby. The psychological control was more effective anyway. The drugs, the isolation, making me doubt my own mind. There were days I almost believed his version of reality." "But you didn't break," Catherine observed quietly. "I came close," Emma admitted. "Then I found the files about Alexandria. His first wife wasn't the only one, no. There were others before her, girlfriends, business associates. Richard has a pattern of identifying talented women, absorbing their work and assets, then discarding them." In an adjacent room converted to a temporary command center, Martinez and David Reynolds worked with Catherine to access the stolen hard drive. "Military-grade encryption," Martinez noted, connecting the drive to a specialized computer. "This will take time without proper decryption keys." "Time we may not have," Reynolds cautioned. "Sullivan will have already engaged top-tier attorneys to file emergency orders for Emma's return. They'll claim mental health crisis, risk to the fetus. Judges tend to err on the side of caution with pregnant women." Catherine watched the decryption program running through possible combinations. Emma mentioned Richard's password tendencies. He uses military references combined with significant dates. Martinez nodded. "Standard practice, personal but not obvious." He turned to Catherine. "Any military call signs you recall hearing?" Catherine thought carefully. "He mentioned a nemesis once, on a phone call, seemed to reference his Navy service." "Nemesis," Martinez repeated, entering the information. "Greek goddess of retribution against hubris. Fitting." On the screen, the decryption program incorporated this new parameter, cycling through date combinations. Suddenly, the screen flashed green, access granted. Reynolds leaned forward. "We're in." The files populated the screen in organized folders: clinical, methodical, damning, financial records showing technology transfers to restricted countries, emails discussing Minecraft's surveillance applications, video files of Emma during her captivity, carefully edited to support the narrative of mental instability. And most disturbing, a folder labeled Alexandria Sullivan, Richard's first wife. Martinez opened it with growing dread. Inside were medical records similar to those fabricated for Emma, police reports of increasingly erratic behavior, and finally documentation of a private commitment to a Swiss psychiatric facility. The last entry was a death certificate dated 3 years earlier, cause of death listed as suicide. "He's done this before," Catherine whispered, horror evident in her voice. Reynolds studied the documents with a prosecutor's eye. "These aren't just crimes, this is a pattern. Systematic isolation, gaslighting, documentation of manufactured mental illness, financial appropriation of assets." Martinez downloaded copies to a secure server. "This is enough for multiple federal warrants. Technology export violations alone carry 20-year sentences." As they continued examining the files, another folder caught Martinez's attention. Project Mnemosiny. Inside were technical specifications for Minecraft's pattern recognition technology, modified for surveillance applications. The documentation detailed how the software could identify individuals through minimal visual data and predict behavior patterns based on limited information. This is why he wanted Emma's technology, Martinez murmured. It's not just surveillance. It's predictive modeling for human behavior. Catherine pointed to a list of potential clients. These aren't just foreign governments. There are domestic agencies here too. Selling to both sides, Reynolds noted grimly. Classic war profiteering for the digital age. In the examination room, Michael briefed Emma on their next steps. We need to move you to a more permanent, safe location until we can secure legal protection. Sullivan's influence extends throughout Massachusetts. I'm not running, Emma stated firmly. I spent 6 months in that cage. I won't spend another day hiding. Emma, Michael began gently. No, she interrupted. Richard built his empire on people's fear of confronting him. He believes himself untouchable. That ends now. Her hand moved protectively over her belly. I owe it to my daughter. And to Alexandria. Michael's expression sharpened. Alexandria? His first wife. He told me she died in a car accident, but I found references in his files suggesting otherwise. We just accessed those files, Michael confirmed grimly. She died in a Swiss facility similar to where he planned to send you. Emma closed her eyes briefly, absorbing this confirmation of her worst fears. When she opened them again, determination had replaced uncertainty. Then we stop him before he does this to someone else. Michael studied his sister with newfound respect. Despite months of captivity and drugging, her spirit remained unbroken. We'll need a strategy that neutralizes his influence and public image simultaneously. His money and connections make conventional legal approaches risky. The gala, Emma said suddenly. His foundation gala is tomorrow night. Every power player in Boston will attend. Politicians, media, judiciary. Michael considered this. A public revelation would be difficult to contain. A slight smile curved Emma's lips. Richard always said the best defense is a devastating offense. Time to use his philosophy against him. You'd be putting yourself at significant risk, Michael cautioned. Emma's expression hardened. Every day in that cage was a risk, every moment wondering if today was the day he'd decide I was no longer useful. I survived by planning, by staying one step ahead mentally even when I couldn't move physically. She leaned forward, her voice intensifying. I've been visualizing this confrontation for months, Michael. This isn't impulse, it's strategy. Dawn broke over Boston, sunlight glinting off rain-washed skyscrapers. In Richard Sullivan's downtown office, an emergency meeting had convened. Attorneys from Preston, Blackwell, and Morris, Boston's most prestigious law firm, filled the conference room, alongside Sophia Reed and security consultants. We've secured emergency custody orders, Howard Preston announced, sliding documents across the polished table. At 68, Preston had represented Boston's elite for 4 decades. Judge Harriman signed them an hour ago. Any hospital or medical facility must surrender Mrs. Sullivan to your custody immediately. Richard nodded tersely. And the kidnapping charges against Garrison? Arrest warrants issued, another attorney confirmed. FBI has been notified, though Agent Martinez appears to have gone off-grid, potentially compromising federal involvement. What about the media? Richard demanded. Sophia activated the wall screen, displaying prepared statements. We're positioning this as a mentally ill pregnant woman kidnapped by her delusional brother. Morning shows have already picked up the story. Your interview with Channel 7 is scheduled for noon. The concerned husband desperate to find his vulnerable wife. Richard reviewed the talking points with clinical detachment. The safe room? Described as a medically approved environment for severe mental health crises, we have Dr. Morris prepared to validate all treatment decisions. The security consultant cleared his throat. We've monitored all known associates of Garrison. No activity at his residence or office. However, we've identified unusual activity at a warehouse in Cambridge registered to a shell company. Potential location. Richard's expression hardened. Prepare a team. Once we have the media narrative established, we move. I want Emma back under medical supervision by nightfall. He turned to Preston. And I want that hard drive recovered before they can access it. Preston shifted uncomfortably. Richard, if that drive contains what you suggest, we need to discuss potential exposure. There is no exposure, Richard stated flatly. Without the encryption key, the drive is useless. Once recovered, it will be destroyed as illegally obtained evidence. As the meeting continued, Richard stepped away to take a private call. I understand the timeline has accelerated, he said quietly. The Minecraft transfer proceeds as planned. Buyers are prepared for delivery immediately following tonight's announcement. The technology that had begun this ordeal, Emma's pattern recognition software, was hours away from delivery to buyers who would use it for purposes far removed from its creator's intentions. In the Ghost Clinic's command center, Michael and his team watched Richard's televised interview with growing concern. My wife suffers from bipolar disorder with psychotic features, Richard explained to the sympathetic interviewer, his expression a masterpiece of contained grief. The pregnancy triggered a severe episode. Now she's been taken by individuals with no understanding of her condition. Compelling performance, Reynolds noted grimly. He's establishing public narrative before we can counter. Martinez pointed to a notification on his tablet. Boston PD has distributed her photo to hospitals and transportation hubs. They're describing her as endangered and mentally unstable. Michael turned to Emma, who watched the interview with detached analytical interest rather than fear. He's playing the same game he used with Alexandria, she observed, the caring husband desperately trying to help his troubled wife. We need to accelerate our timeline, Michael decided. The Foundation Gala begins at 8 tonight. Sullivan will use it to generate further sympathy and announce the Minecraft acquisitions simultaneously. Dr. Chen entered with Emma's latest test results. Blood work shows decreasing sedative levels. She's physically stable enough for limited public appearance if necessary. Emma stood, moving with growing confidence. I need to be there. My absence would only reinforce his narrative. Extremely dangerous, Cooper cautioned. Sullivan will have security throughout the venue. But he won't expect us to walk straight into his event, Emma countered. Richard believes in overwhelming force, not subtlety. He'll be watching hospitals and transportation hubs, not his own gala. Michael studied the Westbrook Hotel blueprint displayed on the main screen, the venue for the evening's Sullivan Foundation Gala. With proper planning and positioning, we could control the environment sufficiently. Martinez nodded slowly. The technical aspects are manageable. We'd need access to their presentation systems. I can help with that, a new voice offered. They turned to find Wei leading in a slender man in his 30s, carrying a laptop bag. This is Jason Kim, former NSA, now runs technical security for my firm. He specializes in systems intrusion. Kim set his laptop on the conference table. I've been analyzing the Westbrook's network architecture. Their event management system that has several exploitable vulnerabilities. Emma moved to the blueprint, pointing to the main ballroom. Richard will make his grand announcement here, using the Foundation's standard multimedia presentation. If we could interrupt that presentation with the actual security footage, a simultaneous data release to selected media outlets would prevent containment, Reynolds added. Once the story breaks across multiple platforms, Sullivan's influence becomes irrelevant. Michael turned to Martinez. Can you secure FBI presence without alerting Sullivan's contacts in the Bureau? The agent nodded. I have a direct line to the Assistant Director of the Criminal Enterprise Division. If we present the evidence from the hard drive, particularly the technology export violations, he can mobilize a specialized team outside normal channels. The plan took shape with military precision. Roles were assigned, contingencies established, timing coordinated. Throughout the discussion, Emma remained at the center, her insights into Richard's psychology and procedures proving invaluable. He'll have the documents prepared for public signing, she explained. The Minecraft acquisition will be presented as a philanthropic merger, with proceeds benefiting the Foundation. The actual technology transfer to restricted markets would happen immediately afterward. Emma paused, considering a critical detail. There's one more thing we need to address. During my captivity, I managed to create a hidden backdoor in the Minecraft system Richard thought he controlled. If he attempts to transfer the technology tonight, I can trigger a failsafe that will corrupt the core algorithm. Michael raised an eyebrow. You built a self-destruct into your own creation? After I discovered what he planned to do with it, yes. Emma's expression hardened. My work was meant to enhance human creativity, not monitor and control people. I'd rather destroy it than let it become a weapon. As preparations continued, Catherine approached Emma privately. There's something else you should know, she said quietly. When I accessed Richard's safe, I found this beside the hard drive. She handed Emma a small keycard. I recognized the logo from the documents I'd seen. It's for a private airfield outside Boston. Emma examined the card. Nan. Mercury Aviation, Richard's private transport hub. There was a flight plan filed for tonight, immediately following the gala. Destination? Cyprus. Emma's expression darkened with understanding. He's planning to leave the country with the technology once the transfer is complete. Cyprus has no extradition treaty with the United States for financial crimes. Catherine hesitated, then added, "There's something else, Emma, something I should have told you years ago." Her voice softened with old regret. "When I worked for your family, I noticed patterns in your father's business associates. Richard Sullivan attended several meetings at your home when you were just a teenager. He was already watching you even then." Emma absorbed this revelation with growing horror. "My technology wasn't random. He targeted me specifically." "I believe so. I noticed how he watched you during those business dinners. I should have said something." Emma squeezed Catherine's hand. "You're saying something now. That's what matters." This new information added urgency to their plan. Sullivan wasn't just announcing an acquisition. He was completing a decade-long strategy and preparing his escape. The Westbrook Hotel glittered under evening lights, its grand ballroom transformed for the Sullivan Foundation's annual gala. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic patterns across marble floors. Boston's elite arrived in formal attire, moving through security with practiced ease, metal detectors and ID verification providing the illusion of safety while recognizing the guest's status. Richard Sullivan greeted attendees in the reception area, the perfect host despite the supposed distress of his missing wife. His bespoke tuxedo and practiced smile projected confidence and control. "Senator Williams, thank you for coming during this difficult time," Dee said, clasping the politician's hand. "Your support means everything." "We'll find Emma," the senator assured him. "Law enforcement has made this their top priority." Richard nodded solemnly. "I'm proceeding with tonight's announcement despite the circumstances. The Foundation's work must continue." Sophia circulated among guests, radiant in an emerald gown, managing security through a discreet earpiece. "East entrance secure," she murmured, smiling at a judge and his wife. All attendees verified against the guest list. In the hotel security office, Jason Kim had gained access dressed as IT support, responding to a service ticket his team had generated an hour earlier. The regular technician had been diverted to a fabricated network issue on another floor. "I'm in," Kim reported through his concealed communications device. "Accessing presentation systems now." Outside the hotel, unmarked FBI vehicles took position at strategic locations. Agent Martinez coordinated with the assistant director, who had arrived personally after reviewing the evidence from Richard's hard drive. "Sullivan's security team is concentrated at main entrances," Martinez reported. "Minimal coverage at service areas." "Weapons?" the assistant director asked. "Concealed sidearms only. They're maintaining a low profile given the high-value guests." "Our teams move on my signal, not before. We need Sullivan clearly incriminated before we act." I am inside the ballroom. Guests took their seats for dinner as a string quartet played softly. Richard's reserved table at the front remained partially empty, a visual reminder of his wife's absence. He had positioned a framed photograph of Emma where she would have sat, a theatrical touch that generated sympathetic murmurs. At precisely 7:45 p.m., Michael's team enacted their plan. Cooper and Way, dressed as catering staff, established positions near emergency exits. Reynolds circulated as a guest, his invitation courtesy of connections in Boston's legal community. Dr. Chen and Catherine remained in a service corridor, monitoring Emma's condition. The most crucial participant in the evening's events had required careful preparation, both medical and psychological. "BP 118/76, pulse 84, Dr. Chen reported quietly. "You're doing well, but remember to pace yourself. The stress response could trigger contractions." Emma nodded, adjusting the elegant maternity gown she wore. Midnight blue, conservative yet striking. Her hair had been styled to frame her face, subtle makeup concealing the pallor from her months of captivity. She appeared every inch the successful businesswoman and expectant mother. "If at any point you feel unsafe," Catherine reminded her, "we abort. Your safety comes first." Emma's hand briefly touched the small device concealed in her clutch, a remote trigger for the Minecraft failsafe. I've lived with fear for months. Tonight it ends, one way or another. Status update? Michael requested through their secure communication system. Technical systems compromised, Kim confirmed. I can take control of all presentation media on command. FBI teams in position, Martinez added. 12 agents total, plus Boston PD officers briefed on the situation. Emma? Michael asked, concern evident despite his professional tone. Ready, she replied simply. At 8 p.m. precisely, Richard approached the podium as the ballroom lights dimmed appropriately. Spotlights illuminated him as he surveyed the assembled power brokers with practiced benevolence. Distinguished guests, friends, supporters of the Sullivan Foundation, he began, his voice carrying perfectly through the sound system. Despite personal tragedy, we gather tonight to celebrate the power of innovation in service of humanity. The audience applauded on cue. Behind Richard, a large screen displayed the Sullivan Foundation logo, a stylized S encompassing a globe. Tonight marks a significant advancement in our mission, Richard continued. I'm pleased to announce Sullivan Global's acquisition of Minecraft Design, an innovative technology company whose groundbreaking pattern recognition software will revolutionize how we deliver humanitarian aid worldwide. The screen transitioned to a professional video showcasing Minecraft's technology, narrated by Richard's polished voice. This acquisition represents a $750 million investment in human potential. In the service corridor, Michael gave the signal. Initiate. Kim executed the prepared command sequence. For a moment, the presentation continued normally. Then the screen flickered, the corporate video dissolving into security footage from the Sullivan estate basement. The ballroom fell silent as the image stabilized. Emma in the cage, Richard standing outside the bars, his voice perfectly audible through the sound system. You'll sign tomorrow or I'll make sure you never see daylight again. Gasps rippled through the audience. Richard froze at the podium, momentarily paralyzed by shock. The footage continued. Sophia pouring wine on Emma, Richard discussing increasing her medication, explicit conversation about fabricating evidence of mental illness. Then, most damning of all, a video conference between Richard and an unnamed foreign official discussing how Minecraft's technology could be used to identify and track political dissidents. Richard recovered, lunging toward the AV control panel. Technical difficulties, he announced, voice strained. Please stand by, Mom. But the system no longer responded to his commands. The damning footage continued playing, unstoppable. In the stunned silence that followed, a single set of footsteps echoed through the ballroom. Emma Sullivan walked steadily down the center aisle, her pregnant silhouette unmistakable in the spotlight that automatically tracked her movement. Richard's face drained of color as he registered her presence, not just his escaped prisoner, but the living contradiction to every narrative he had constructed. Ladies and gentlemen, Emma said, her voice clear and strong as she approached the stage. I believe my husband was discussing the acquisition of my company. The audience erupted in confused murmurs. Security personnel moved uncertainly, receiving conflicting orders through their earpieces as Sophia frantically tried to regain control of the situation. Richard recovered quickly, summoning his considerable acting skills. Emma, he exclaimed, voice projecting relief. Thank God you're safe. Where have you been? We've been searching everywhere. Emma ascended to the stage, maintaining a careful distance from Richard. I've been exactly where that video shows, Richard, imprisoned in your basement while you prepared to steal my company and sell my technology to unauthorized foreign entities. The screen behind them shifted to financial documentation from Richard's hard drive, transaction records showing planned technology transfers to restricted markets. This is absurd, Richard countered, attempting to approach Emma. My wife has been suffering from severe mental illness, exacerbated by pregnancy. These delusions are documented reality, Emma interrupted, her composure unfaltering, as your first wife discovered before me. The screen changed again, displaying Alexandria Sullivan's records. The progression from accomplished woman to supposedly unstable patient, culminating in her death certificate. Emma turned to address the shocked audience directly. Many of you knew Alexandria. She was a talented architect whose innovative, sustainable design concepts were quietly absorbed into Sullivan Global's portfolio after her tragic accident. Before her, there was Natalie Reynolds, a software engineer who Richard dated for 8 months before she suffered a nervous breakdown that coincided with his acquisition of her security patents. She gestured to the screen, which now displayed a timeline of Richard's relationships, each ending in either mysterious illness, accident, or disappearance, each followed by business acquisitions. This isn't coincidence, this is pattern. The audience's confusion transformed into horror as understanding dawned. A reporter near the front began broadcasting discreetly on her phone. Others followed suit, the story spreading beyond containment. Richard's expression hardened as he realized his carefully constructed facade was crumbling. He moved toward Emma with clear intent, but Michael appeared beside her, his presence a shield. "That's far enough, Sullivan," Michael stated, his voice carrying authority honed through decades of law enforcement. "Security," Richard shouted. "Remove these individuals immediately." But his security team hesitated as FBI agents emerged from strategic positions throughout the ballroom, credentials displayed. "Richard Sullivan," Martinez announced, approaching the stage with the assistant director beside him. "You're under arrest for kidnapping, assault, fraud, and violations of the Export Administration regulations." Richard's eyes darted around the room, calculating escape routes, measuring options. Finding none, he turned to Sophia, who was already backing away, her self-preservation instincts overriding loyalty. "This is a misunderstanding," Richard attempted, addressing the audience rather than law enforcement. "A family dispute being grossly mischaracterized." "The evidence speaks for itself," the assistant director replied, gesturing to the screen still displaying damning documentation. "As does Mrs. Sullivan's testimony and physical evidence of her captivity." A distinguished older woman stood from her table near the front, Judge Eleanor Hamilton of the Federal Circuit. Her voice cut through the chaos with judicial clarity. "I've seen enough, Agent Martinez. Proceed with the arrest." As agents moved to take Richard into custody, he made one desperate lunge toward Emma. Whether to harm or use her as leverage remained unclear. Michael intercepted him with practiced efficiency, subduing him with a precision takedown that spoke of extensive training. The assembled elite of Boston watched in stunned silence as handcuffs closed around Richard Sullivan's wrists, the metallic click audible in the hushed ballroom. "The technology transfer," Emma said urgently to Martinez. "Mercury Aviation, he has a plane waiting to leave the country tonight with the software." Martinez immediately relayed this information, dispatching agents to the private airfield. "Second team to Sullivan Global Headquarters. Secure all servers and documentation." As Richard was led away, his composed facade finally shattered. "You have no idea what you've done," he snarled at Emma. "Who you've crossed. This isn't over." Emma met his gaze steadily. "You're right about one thing, Richard. It isn't over. It's just beginning." She held up the small device from her purse. "And this ensures that your weapon dies tonight." She pressed the button, activating the failsafe in Minecraft's core algorithm. Somewhere in Sullivan Global's servers, the pattern recognition technology that Richard had planned to weaponize began its self-destruction sequence, lines of code rewriting themselves, security backdoors closing permanently. The technology that had made Emma a target had just been rendered useless to those who would abuse it. The media storm that followed was unprecedented. By morning, Richard Sullivan's empire began its collapse. Sullivan Global stocks plummeted as investors fled. Board members resigned. Government contracts were suspended, pending investigation. From the security of a federal safe house, Emma watched the coverage with mixed emotions. Freedom still felt new, almost disorienting after months of captivity. FBI has confirmed at least 17 violations of export controls, a news anchor reported. The technology developed by Emma Sullivan's company was allegedly being prepared for sale to entities in restricted markets, with potential national security implications. Michael muted the television. "You don't need to watch all of this." Emma shook her head. "I need to understand what happens next." "Preliminary hearing is tomorrow," Martinez explained, entering with fresh coffee. "Sullivan's being held without bail as a flight risk. His attorneys are already positioning for an insanity defense." "Ironic," Emma noted dryly, "after all his efforts to paint me as mentally unstable." "And Sophia?" Emma asked. "Cooperating fully in exchange for reduced charges. She's provided details on offshore accounts, technology transfers, everything." David Reynolds reviewed documents at the dining table. The civil case is equally strong. We've filed emergency injunctions preserving your control of Minecraft. Sullivan's attempt to transfer ownership has been blocked. Emma nodded, one hand resting on her belly where her daughter moved restlessly. And Alexandria's family? Notified, Michael confirmed. They're reopening investigation into her death. The Swiss facility has been secured for records. The press is requesting interviews, Reynolds added. Alexandria's younger sister particularly wants to connect with you. Emma nodded thoughtfully. I'd like that. The women Richard targeted need to know they weren't alone. That's part of his method. Isolation makes you doubt yourself. Catherine entered from the kitchen with tea. 6 months as a housekeeper had ingrained habits of service that would take time to break. The safe house is secured for another week. After that, we'll need to discuss more permanent arrangements. Emma sipped the tea gratefully. I've been thinking about that. After the baby comes, I want to establish something different. Different how? Michael asked. A foundation of my own. Not for publicity or tax advantages like Richard's, but a genuine support system for women trapped in similar situations. Psychological abuse leaves no visible bruises but destroys lives just as effectively. Dr. Chen, who had continued monitoring Emma's pregnancy, nodded approval. There's certainly need. The psychological manipulation Sullivan employed is surprisingly common, especially among wealthy, powerful men. Within 2 days of the news breaking, Catherine added, we've already received messages from 16 women describing similar experiences with powerful partners. The pattern is startlingly consistent. Emma set down her cup decisively. Then that's what we'll build. Something good from all this pain. She turned to Catherine. Would you consider a position, not as household staff, but as program director? Catherine's eyes widened with surprise. Me, I don't have the qualifications. You have exactly the qualifications needed, Emma interrupted gently. You recognized the signs. You acted when others looked away. You risked everything to help someone you barely knew. For the first time since they'd met, Catherine's composure broke. Tears filled her eyes as decades of guilt over her own sister's fate found release in this unexpected redemption. I failed Rebecca. I won't fail anyone else. A foundation needs a name, Reynolds noted, smiling. Emma considered this, her hand still resting on her belly. Phoenix House, for women rising from the ashes. 4 months later, the courthouse steps gleamed in spring sunlight as Emma Sullivan emerged through the massive doors. At nearly 10 months pregnant, she moved with the careful dignity of a woman carrying precious cargo. Behind her walked Michael, Dr. Chen, Catherine, and a team of attorneys. Media representatives surged forward, cameras flashing, questions overlapping. Mrs. Sullivan, your reaction to the verdict? Emma paused at the microphone stand, prepared for her statement. Despite everything, she had retained her married name, not out of any loyalty to Richard, but as a reminder of what she had overcome. Today, justice has been served, she began, her voice steady. Richard Sullivan has been convicted on all counts and sentenced to 30 years in federal prison. More importantly, his crimes have been exposed to the world. She paused, gathering herself before continuing. This case was never just about me. It was about Alexandria Sullivan, whose voice was silenced forever. It was about every person who has been isolated, gaslit, and made to doubt their own reality by someone with power and resources. From the crowd, Alexandria's sister Julia raised her hand in acknowledgement, the two women sharing a look of profound understanding. In the months since Richard's arrest, they had formed a bond forged through shared experience, working together to establish Phoenix House's legal framework. A reporter called out, "What about Minecraft's technology?" The pattern recognition software will be repurposed for its original intended use, enhancing creative design and accessibility. Additionally, a portion of company resources will support Phoenix House, our new foundation assisting survivors of psychological abuse. Another reporter pressed, "There are rumors that elements within the government were interested in acquiring the technology for surveillance purposes. Any comment?" Emma's expression remained composed. The technology no longer exists in the form they wanted. I ensured that. She offered no further explanation, leaving the mystery of Minecraft's self-destruct sequence as just that, a mystery. As questions continued, Emma felt a sharp contraction, stronger than the Braxton Hicks contractions she had been experiencing for weeks. She maintained her composure, concluding her statement. Richard believed wealth and influence made him untouchable. Today proves no one is above accountability. She pressed a hand to her lower back as another contraction began. That's all for now. Thank you. Dr. Chen noticed Emma's discomfort immediately, moving closer as they walked toward the waiting vehicle. How frequent? She asked quietly. About 8 minutes, Emma replied. Started during closing arguments. Chen nodded with professional calm. Let's get you to the hospital. Michael overheard this exchange, instantly shifting to protective mode, clearing their path through the crowd with practiced authority. As they reached the vehicle, Emma paused, looking back at the courthouse where Richard Sullivan's fate had been decided. She felt no joy in his downfall, only relief that justice had prevailed. The empire he had built through manipulation and cruelty was dismantled, its resources redirected toward healing rather than harm. Ready? Michael asked, concern evident beneath his composed exterior. Emma nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. For everything. Liberty Sullivan was born at 3:17 a.m. after 14 hours of labor, 7 pounds, 6 ounces of determination and new beginnings. As Emma held her daughter for the first time, the lingering shadows of captivity seemed to recede, replaced by fierce, protective love. Michael stood by the hospital room window, uncharacteristic emotion evident in his usually stoic expression. She has your eyes, he observed softly. And your stubbornness, Emma replied, exhausted but radiant. She decided when to arrive on her own terms. Catherine entered with flowers, followed by Dr. Chen and the others who had formed Emma's unexpected family of choice. Their presence filled the room with warmth that no Sullivan wealth could have purchased. Julia Bennett, Alexandria's sister, arrived last, carrying a small wrapped package. I found this among my sister's things, she explained, placing it on Emma's bedside table. Her journal from the months before she disappeared. I thought you might want it for the Foundation archives. Emma nodded gratefully. Her voice will be heard again. Phoenix House received preliminary approval for its charter, Reynolds reported, keeping his voice appropriately subdued for the setting. The Foundation can begin operations next month. We've already received applications from 3 women seeking assistance, Catherine added, all from situations eerily similar to yours. High-profile marriages, gaslighting, isolation. And 34 volunteers, Julia continued, survivors wanting to help others through the process. The response has been overwhelming. Emma nodded, her attention primarily on Liberty's perfect features. We'll start small, but grow. Every woman deserves the chance to rebuild. As morning light filtered through the hospital blinds, casting golden patterns across the room, Emma felt a sense of completion. The cage that had nearly broken her had instead revealed her strength. The man who had sought to destroy her had instead catalyzed her purpose. What happens next? Catherine asked, adjusting Liberty's blanket with practiced hands. Emma looked up, meeting each of their gazes in turn, these unlikely allies who had become her most trusted circle. We built something better, something that lasts. Liberty's tiny hand wrapped around Emma's finger, her grip surprisingly strong for one so new to the world. In that simple connection, Emma found her answer. The chains that had once held her now lay broken, transformed into foundations for a different kind of strength, 18 months later. The sunlight danced across the polished wooden floors of Fortress Cafe, the renovated waterfront property that housed both Emma's design studio and a public gathering space. The cafe's large windows overlooked Massachusetts Bay, where sailboats traced white patterns against blue water. Emma moved among the tables, Liberty balanced on her hip. At 18 months, the toddler observed everything with curious eyes, her red hair a wispy echo of her mother's. In the corner, a group of women gathered for the weekly Phoenix House support meeting. Some bore visible signs of their experiences, nervous gestures, watchful eyes. Others carried scars visible only to those who understood such journeys. All found acceptance here. Catherine facilitated the session with natural empathy, her career transition from household manager to program director, proving remarkably successful. Recovery isn't linear, she was explaining. Some days feel like moving backward. That's part of the process. A young woman raised her hand hesitantly. How do you stop feeling like you're still in that cage, even when you're physically free? Catherine glanced at Emma, who approached the circle, setting Liberty down to play with toys in the children's area nearby. The cage becomes part of you, Emma acknowledged quietly. For months after my escape, I'd wake up at night convinced I was still there. The difference is that now you get to decide what to do with that experience. She gestured toward the far wall where a striking art installation hung, a steel cage partially disassembled, its bars transformed into a framework supporting delicate glass birds in flight. Sunlight through the windows created rainbow patterns through the glass, casting colorful shadows across the floor. That's made from the actual cage Richard kept me in, Emma explained. I had them bring it here after the estate was liquidated. Seemed fitting to transform it. The young woman stared at the installation, understanding dawning in her eyes. From confinement to flight. Exactly, Emma agreed. Everything can be repurposed, even the darkest experiences. Michael entered through the side door, bringing cool autumn air with him. Though he maintained his security consulting business, his priorities had shifted dramatically since Liberty's birth. The former FBI agent had discovered unexpected fulfillment in the role of protective uncle. Court filing complete, he reported quietly to Emma. The Sullivan estate proceeds will be distributed to Alexandria's family and the foundation as ordered. Emma nodded, watching Liberty explore a picture book with focused determination. Any appeals? None expected. Richard's legal resources are finally exhausted. From the prison, where he would spend the next 3 decades, Richard Sullivan had continued fighting, filing appeals, attempting to access hidden assets, seeking any leverage to regain control. Each effort had been systematically defeated, his power diminishing with each failed maneuver. And the technology? Emma asked. Michael's expression remained professionally neutral. As you predicted, certain agencies continue attempting to reconstruct Minecraft's algorithms, without success. Good, Emma replied simply. The failsafe she had designed hadn't just corrupted the code, it had fundamentally altered the mathematical foundation of the pattern recognition system, making reconstruction effectively impossible. The cafe door opened as Dr. Chen arrived for her regular visit, bringing news of 3 new mothers assisted through the Foundation's medical program. The circle of healing expanded steadily, reaching women who might otherwise have remained trapped in invisible cages. Come see what I've just finished, Emma said, leading them toward the studio portion of the building. Inside her workspace, canvases and digital designs shared space with children's toys. Emma's artistic talents, once nearly stolen along with her technology, had flourished in freedom. Her latest works explored themes of confinement and liberation, each piece created using a simplified version of Minecraft that enhanced rather than replaced human creativity. Against one wall stood a work in progress, a mixed-media portrait of Alexandria Sullivan, reconstructed from photographs and descriptions provided by her sister. The woman's eyes held a knowing sadness that suggested she had recognized her fate before the end. For the memorial wall, Emma explained, we're documenting every case we can verify, creating a visual history that can't be erased or forgotten. The memorial already contains 17 portraits, women whose stories had emerged following Richard's conviction. Some had survived their experiences, others, like Alexandria, had not. Together, they formed a powerful testament to both human cruelty and resilience. Julia Bennett had become a regular presence at Phoenix House, channeling her grief for her sister into advocacy work. Her legal background proved invaluable in navigating the complex process of establishing guardianships for women escaping controlling relationships. The first satellite location opens next month in Chicago, Catherine reported. The model is scaling faster than we anticipated. Michael studied the memorial wall with quiet intensity. You've created something remarkable here. Emma smiled, a genuine expression untouched by shadows. We all did. As Liberty explored under watchful eyes, Emma moved to the large windows overlooking the water. Beyond the harbor, the Boston skyline rose against the autumn sky, the same city where Richard had once ruled with wealth and intimidation, now the center of a different kind of influence. Phoenix House had expanded to 3 locations, providing shelter, legal support, and recovery programs for survivors of psychological abuse. Minecraft's technology, returned to its original creative purpose, supported the foundation while advancing accessibility in design fields. The empire Richard had built through fear and manipulation had fallen, replaced by a community founded on healing and transformation. Emma watched her daughter examining a colorful mobile with intense concentration, the same focus Emma brought to her designs. Liberty would grow up understanding both the darkness humans could create and their capacity for recovery and light. "We should head back," Catherine suggested. "The support group is wrapping up." Emma nodded, gathering Liberty into her arms. As they walked toward the cafe, she paused beside the art installation, watching sunlight transform the cage bars into pathways for illumination rather than tools of confinement. "The light always finds a way," she murmured to Liberty, who reached toward the rainbow patterns dancing across the floor. Behind them, Michael smiled faintly, the hardened former agent softened by his niece's wonder and his sister's resilience. Together they returned to the cafe where women who had once believed themselves trapped forever now planned futures limited only by imagination. Outside, the autumn breeze carried golden leaves across the patio, nature's reminder that even endings contain the seeds of new beginnings, and that freedom, once truly found, becomes a foundation that can never again be shaken.